and welcome back to Mixed Media Live. We're back, I think. Oh, okay. For some reason, my audio meter wasn't showing for a moment. I think it glitched out for a moment. I was like, did I mute myself? Okay. We are live for another week of Mixed Media, and it's going to be a great one. As Ben talks about Andrei Rublev. Did I pronounce that right?
Mostly, yeah.
Okay. Something like that. And great Tarkovsky flick, and you can stay tuned for that after we talk about the news and talk about our lives for a little bit. But just before we begin, we should introduce ourselves for all of you who are tuning in for the first time. So, my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella based out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania.
Hi, my name is Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and media composer.
And my name is Nathan Nestor. I'm a 3D modeler, video game developer.
Sup. And sup to Kai in the chat. How's it going? And Kai is one of our supporters at mixedmedia.locals.com, as alongside 99 Crime, not Rob Sharma. I can't believe that's still in my memory. 99 Crime, Alex Egbert, and Post, who support us at mixedmedia.locals.com for $5 a month. It really does help a lot. We've got actually like a little build up, a little nest egg. I have to share with my co-hosts. Actually, I looked at the account for first time recently. I was like, oh wait, there's money in here. And that money will be put to good use as we continue to sort of change over the podcast. We've been making some changes with the format. The whole layout's going to change. It's going to be not bright white and destroying your eyes, as I chose to do like an idiot when I did the first revamp of the show.
Hopefully it also has the correct date and time on it, which
yes,
we're so far behind. Like, we still have like the edit I manually made with the virtual pen from like 2 changes ago.
Wait, doesn't the whiteboard not work anymore?
Yeah, the site is read only now, so the whiteboard doesn't
read only. So okay.
The whiteboard doesn't whiteboard currently, and I'm kind of biding my time because I'm like, I could just wait to find another solution when we switch the format. We'll see how that goes. But usually, for those who don't know, this thing on the side here is a live whiteboard. You can actually draw on it if you're a Locals member. We've had that happen a few times in the past, which is really cool, though not as much lately. And you could draw art, you could make fun of us, you could make memes, you can literally drag and drop pictures into there. All that kind of stuff. And that functionality will continue to exist as we sort of fix the short format and all that kind of stuff. It should all work. So, yeah. And if you're new here as well, What Mixed Media is a weekly live stream podcast every Tuesday at 8 p.m. currently, Eastern. And what we do is we talk about anything art related, basically. We have our particular fields that we just talked about. And so we talk about anything and everything related to those fields or anything else. Like we've talked about dance on this channel, roller coasters, pretty much anything you could possibly think of. So if there's anything that you think, if you're aesthetically inclined, even a little bit, and you're a human being, so you are aesthetically inclined, you will find something of interest in our vast catalog of episodes, and you should definitely check them out. Hit our name. If this topic doesn't interest you, I guarantee you there's something in our catalog that would. So definitely check those out.
Before we get started, Nathan, you like hearing anything odd with Irving's microphone?
Oh yeah, like tapping.
No.
Yeah.
Were you just tapping, or no?
Or it almost sounds like
I
it's
see what's
something.
happening.
Yeah. Like, is it something moving?
Yeah, so my mic moves, and I think it was tapping the this little other swing arm next to it.
Okay, yeah,
Is
I was
it good
gonna or, like wondering something like that, or like something on your desk was rattling or whatever.
Yeah, thank you. Is it good now? Better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Sweet. So how are you guys' weeks?
Fine. I don't honestly. I'm trying to think. Did anything notable occur? I can't think of anything. Yeah, just pretty boring week, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I had a pretty darn boring, actually stressful and aggravating week. Still trying to close on this property. I feel like I actually thought about this earlier this week. I've been working at buying this property for about a year now. Um, in terms of like the formal process of buying, maybe not that long, maybe something like 3 or 4 months. But that's abnormally long to get to a closing date for a property. And literally, our closing date is set for this Friday. We need literally every prayer we could possibly get because there's still one piece of paperwork that we're waiting on to receive in order to be able to close. But everything else is fine. And the seller is like telling us that he's just going to drop us if we can't get to the finish line here. It hasn't been our fault, by the way, this entire time. It's just random garbage just keeps happening to get in the way. So, yeah, not fun. But, yeah, my week has just been dealing with that stuff and trying to finish as much work as possible before I move because I won't be able to do work for a bit. So, that's also a bit much. How about you, Nathan?
Oh, there was a mass at Rutgers for seniors, so technically I already graduated. I went I went there as a honorary senior or something. I don't know. People don't know I graduated in December, so yeah. But yeah, that was good. But yeah, I think that was pretty much all of interest that happened this weekend.
Nice. How about news? Any interesting news? If y'all don't have anything, I have a bigger topics.
Yeah, I don't really have anything. I don't think. Just doing a little quick check. Yeah, I don't really have anything other than the usual random things coming out and stuff like that. But I will say this is not gaming. This is music. But Irvin and I were talking about this just like a moment ago with like the. Well, actually, I'm curious, Ben. Do you know anything about what's going on? I know it's not your sphere, but do you know anything about what's going on in like the rap community at the moment?
Not at all.
Okay.
I was wondering how global, like how.
Yeah. I was like, this is a really big event, but like, I don't think. Yeah, I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense to me. Like if you go to like on YouTube, like I think Drake's song was like trending for like literally like weeks or not weeks, because been out like 2 weeks, I think, 2 weeks or something like that. Consistently, I think it's been 16 days since or something like that. Yeah, Rick Ross's song was trending for a long time. It was just crazy. Like I've never seen this before. It's like Kendrick Lamar released a song 7 hours ago, has 4.5 million views or something like that, right? Absolutely insane. Currently trending, as one might imagine on YouTube. Basically, what is I guess Kai says I haven't opened. He says, I know Kendrick Lamar mixed up Haley Joel Osment, is that how you pronounce that? Osment? With Joel Osteen in a song. I don't know if that's true, actually. I don't know. Maybe it's true.
I think it was supposed to be a double entendre, no?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be a double entendre.
Yeah.
But
I'm not sure. I don't even know who Joel Osment is, so I wouldn't be able to comment. Or Haley Joel Osment.
Actress, I believe, in AI, I think the movie that Kendrick Lamar references.
Right, okay. Yeah, I assumed it was a double entendre between...
Kai said, no, it is assuming... I'm assuming he means it is a double entendre?
Okay.
Or
it's very weird,
though. Okay,
yeah.
Fair enough. I think that was actually... Yeah, it was probably a weirder double entendre. But, yeah. Because if it's on purpose, he purposely wants to shoot the kid from The Sixth Sense. I have not watched The Sixth Sense, so I don't know who this kid is, but I suppose it's not good.
It doesn't make sense as lyrics. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah,
very forced. But anyways,
Mm-hmm. Oh, you go ahead.
I was going to say to clue everyone in who doesn't know what's happening, essentially. Basically, so... There are these rap artists named Future and Metro Boomin. Or Metro Boomin is a producer. He makes like beats and stuff like that. And Future is a rapper. And they released an album called We Don't Trust You that was essentially like... I didn't listen to the album, but from what I understand, it is just people not liking Drake for 12 songs or something like that, basically. Many features on it, people just saying...
Can you imagine an album being dedicated to not liking a person? That's... like, what the heck? I don't think that's ever happened before, as far as I
I mean,
understand.
what's that song? Right? You know, you're so vain. You probably think this song is about you.
What's that song?
The song "You're So Vain."
No, I don't know that song.
I don't know either.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's not exactly related, but
Gotcha. Kai says the same. So the kid from the Sixth Sense is the same as the kid from AI, but not the same person as the prosperity gospel preacher Joel Osteen. Yes. Okay. So yeah. So on that we don't trust you album.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
It was a song called. Huh?
I was just on. I understand what Kai's trying to say. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Has a there's a song called Like That featuring Kendrick Lamar, and Kendrick Lamar, I guess, very directly, this is Drake and kind of J. Cole in the process, but that's not really relevant.
Wait, actually, hold on.
Yeah.
Further background, actually, because I think if you don't understand hip hop at all, hip hop is unique in the sense that it has a sports angle to it. It has a lot of other angles to it, and those angles we will not discover in the show, because maybe I will do a crossover show on hip hop one day, because it's an interesting topic. But if you don't understand hip hop, there's a sports component to hip hop that kind of overlays the entire culture. So the "I'm better than you at rapping" kind of component. So go ahead.
Right, and that's where things like diss tracks come in, where you're like, you might target a person or a group of people and be like, I'm challenging you guys, I'm better. Now let's go back and forth and see what happens, essentially. And now there are like kind of two ways that this can turn out, right? Sometimes it's purely like for sport and it's like whatever, right? Like Kendrick Lamar did years ago on Control, where it was like, some people responded and it was like whatever. But then there's also like a more like, sometimes people make diss tracks like because they actually don't like the person or have a real grievance, not for sport, where like I'm just calling you out on something actually bad that's going on, essentially. And that is what this album was doing. This wasn't really I guess it was maybe a partially for sport album, but also like we really don't like Drake. It's kind of like
it's like straight up hatred.
Yeah. And so so Kendrick Lamar joined that, and that got a lot of a lot of listens and whatever. And everyone was like, okay, was Drake going to respond? And it's interesting because years ago, there was a Big Sean song featuring Jay Electronica and Kendrick, where Kendrick, this was a for sport play. He called out a bunch of people, essentially, but totally for sport and not like, actually like hating on people or whatever. And Drake did not like this. He did not everyone else seemed pretty fine with it. He didn't like it. He didn't respond.
He took personal exception to it.
Right. Even though his name his name was probably said, I assume.
Yeah, it was
said a lot of names. So now this time though it was way different. And so like, is he even gonna respond? Like Drake didn't respond last time, but he responded in like some like really short amount of time. I forget what it was. Do you remember what it was, Irving?
This time around?
No, Drake responding. Yeah. The
it wasn't that short. It was like no, it wasn't that short. It was like 2 weeks.
No, sorry, Rick Ross was short. That's what it was. Drake took, I think, maybe, I don't know. It was definitely days. I don't know. It could be 2 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. But he responds with a song called Push-Ups, kind of, going back. And then I'm skipping everything related to J. Cole, just for brevity. And then that song was trending for like a million years, essentially. I think 3 hours later, Rick Ross released a diss track against Drake, which is kind of insane. That was trending for a long time. And then Drake, waiting for Kendrick Lamar to release his song, released another diss track against Kendrick again, back to back, because there's no response. It was a lot shorter. But he did that, and he made use of AI. Very strange, very weird. There was AI Tupac and AI Snoop Dogg, a living person, in that song. And the idea that he's playing on is the idea that Tupac and Snoop Dogg are influences to Kendrick Lamar, and they were kind of like backhand roasting him essentially in a way, like kind of saying the general gist of it was like, hey, please represent us, but you're failing us, kind of thing. I guess is what he was saying. But it's very weird because like especially Snoop Dogg is like still alive. It's like I don't know what. It's very very weird. But he released that. And then Finally today, 7 hours ago or 8 hours ago at this point, or something like that, Kendrick Lamar responded with a song called Euphoria that was 6 minutes long, and that as of an hour ago. So it's been out for 7 hours. That's 4.5 million views. So yeah, that's the current state of things. I heard many theories like, oh, basically, hip hop was dying, and so they need to like reinvigorate, people and get people back in. And so like they did this all like some scripted event, which I don't think is true.
No,
it seems too crazy.
No, it's not true.
Yeah, I feel like it wouldn't be this damaging to people's character if it was a scripted event. Yeah, that is
yeah. Basically, there's a hip hop civil war going on, and that's why hip hop is trending like crazy.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I kind of want to do an episode on hip hop now that I think about it, because it's such an interesting topic from so many angles. There's many angles to kind of cut the cake.
Yeah.
So on my neck of the woods, so some keeping up with news that we've talked about in the past. Gina Carano's lawsuit got its reply a week ago or something like that from Disney. I have not had a chance to check it out yet, but if you'd like to hear me break it down like I did last time, that episode did fairly well. So, if you enjoy that kind of legal breakdown, and I do the same thing, or maybe not the same thing, maybe we don't need the word for word kind of walkthrough, because the whole point of that was to kind of learn how to read a legal document and see how it's accessible to read legal documents. Now that we know that, I can just give you the link and you can read it yourself, and maybe we could just talk about it more generally next time. But if you would be interested in that for my next segment, definitely let me know. But I again don't know what the heck is in it. The other thing is this is pretty bombshell news that I didn't know anything about until the news came out, and I still don't really know that much about it other than some interesting facts. So Harvey Weinstein was is that an illegal YouTube name? I don't know. Warvey Heinstein. I actually mentioned him not too long ago on a prior episode. I can't remember why. I think in relation to the Diddy stuff that's going on. But his case was thrown out in the appeals court for his rape conviction. Another word maybe I'm not supposed to say on YouTube. Sorry, I don't know. And so he was convicted, if you didn't know. He was convicted in New York. I mean, you probably know who Harvey Weinstein is, because he had, I don't know how long ago that was when, I don't know, it might have been like almost a decade ago. I'm not entirely sure. When his controversy started, sexual impropriety, as you can imagine. And he was convicted in New York, I don't know exactly when, of rape. And so what ended up happening, and this is something that's important for people to understand, because I think we have this temptation when we think we know something about a case or a person or whatever, that we have this temptation to then think that what we think is the moral outcome is what the case's outcome should be in the courts, right? But the court system has a whole other goal in mind that is not particular to the person that's in front of them, which is that the goal of the legal system is to prevent injustice. More than it is to carry out justice, it's to prevent injustice. I've said this many times on this channel before. I've said this about what's his face, Alec Baldwin, even, that once someone becomes a defendant, my impulse is immediately to look at things in a more favorable light to the defendant, only because when you look at these cases for a very long time, when you look at criminal cases for a very long time, you read a lot of criminal complaints, civil complaints, you watch enough trials, you realize very quickly that the state has a huge advantage over the defendant. And that's why a lot of the systems in the court system are designed to give the defendant the benefit of the doubt. Hence, innocence, until proven guilty, right? So, in this case, just to so we can cut out all the spin and get to like why this happened, right? And again, I haven't watched the case or read the documents from it, so maybe I'm slightly off. But there's certain things in here that I think are kind of you don't lie about them because I just pull up the record and can double check. So I assume they're true. Which is that the prosecutor in the New York case had a difficulty with the two New York defendants, or not defendants, victims, or alleged victims, that were claiming against him. The problem was that both of them were in a relationship with him. This is a huge problem. Like a consensual relationship, I mean. Like, they dated and, like a full-on consensual relationship with him. The problem with this is always going to be reasonable doubt. Juries are not very likely in those particular cases to be able to find beyond a reasonable doubt, because oftentimes in these cases, even if it did happen, there's not going to be proof that's going to be easily accessible. It's not recorded, right? It's not, there might not be texts of Harvey Weinstein bragging about it or whatever. You see what I mean? Like, and then it looks like a consensual relationship. You see the problem? Like, the jury's going to have a problem finding against the person, even if you think that he did it. I have no opinion on it. Even if you think that he did it, in terms of the reasonable doubt standard, it's going to be difficult for that jury to find against him, simply because a consensual relationship is now the kind of habitat in which these things can often these allegations can be abused one way or the other. This has happened many times before. People intuitively understand this because a lot of people have been through really bad relationships and been accused of stuff, right? So reasonable doubt is a very obvious avenue for the jury to acquit. So what the New York prosecutor decided to do, because there are allegations outside of New York, they tried to request that these other allegations, these other alleged victims, wanted to testify in court against him in New York. The problem, though, is that the crime was for RAPE in New York, not elsewhere, right? So the jurisdiction is in New York. You charge him for that same crime in other places if he's done those things in other places, right? So the reason for this is because state laws govern these kinds of actions in the locations that they are. So these are the only two alleged victims that we have in New York. So the prosecutor decided to try to get an avenue of getting those people. And this is exactly what I say about the power of the state. You don't realize how powerful the state can be against the defendant, and just completely steamroll through because of a lot of different factors that I won't get into. But the state basically tried to wiggle their way around this rule that the judge denied those people coming to testify, and then said this is going to be character evidence instead. So we're not bringing these people in to charge him against those people. We're going to bring those people in to testify as to the character of Mr. Weinstein. Does that make sense? So they were trying to squirrel around the rule by violating a different rule, actually, and that's actually what ends up happening. The judge ends up badly, probably because the judge is a human being and probably, again, I haven't read the transcript or anything. If I were to guess, this happens all the time, the judge feels like the dude's guilty anyway, so let him cook, right? Like, what does it make a difference whether I skirt around the rule or not? No one's going to come save him, right? That's the bad part. That's the bad part of the legal system. So the judge ends up approving these witnesses coming in as character witnesses. Now, you don't do this because this is something called propensity evidence, which basically means that it's evidence that shows that someone is more or less likely on a probabilistic level to commit a crime because they did it some other time, right? This is not allowed in almost any court that I know of. I've heard propensity evidence be thrown out almost every single time. The reason this is not allowed in almost every court is, again, to protect the defendant from predatory reasoning. The predatory reasoning would be, because you've done this before, you've done it this time. The goal of the court system is not to figure out whether you're even the most likely person to do it. You are saying you did it, right? Beyond a reasonable doubt is just a very high standard for that. But it's pretty much you did it, right? Like, the court system is trying to figure out who did it, not you are 99% likely to be the person who did it. Those are completely different processes, if that makes sense. Different frames of analytics. So the New York court ends up allowing this illegal propensity evidence to come in, which is going to prejudice a jury to think, well, he's done it with all these other women whose stories I believe, even if I don't believe these two other women, right? And so we're going to convict him because we believe these other women, even though we don't believe these two other women, whose stories are a lot more sketch. That's what New York did to get his case thrown out, because he appealed that decision the judge made. The higher court agreed that that was a miscarriage of justice. And then they, I think, I don't know what the state of the case is now. I don't know if they, there's something called mistrial with prejudice, which means that the case can't be tried again. This is to punish the state so that the state doesn't continue to, it lets the person get away so the state doesn't use the process as the punishment, and so that they don't do this again, right? So I don't know if that's what happened or if it was without prejudice, which would be, it's just a mistrial, so they could retry him all over again if they would like to. So yeah, I just wanted to let people know what that was about, because I see a lot of headlines that just have no info on it and just gin up, emotions on one side or the other. Again, I have no idea about this case at all. I have no opinion on it, other than he seems like a scumbag. So there's that. But But in terms of the particular allegations, I don't have an opinion. So, but that's a huge piece of news because obviously huge name in entertainment. Saw the headlines plastered everywhere. All right. Shall we get into the topic for today?
Sure.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you for watching this news segment. And next, Ben will be talking about
Andrei Rublev.
All right. Here. I'll have to do movies. Yes. Here we go.
Mixed Media Movies.
All right. Welcome to Mixed Media Movies. Normally, segment done by our resident film expert, Irving. But today, as part of our ongoing, continued, took us all month to do the kind of April Fool's switch. Everyone kind of switches what we talk about. I'm going to be talking about narrative structure and the film, the Andrei Tarkovsky film, Andrei Rublev. So my name is Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and media composer. Once again, normally film is not something I talk about, but here we are today, and I'll let my co-hosts introduce themselves.
So my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella based out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania.
My name is Nathan Nestor. I'm a 3D modeler and video game developer.
All right. So this is... I know I've talking about this film for a while, because honestly, I think this is probably my favorite film out there. Andrei Rublev. So it's really the first really, really big film that Tarkovsky did. It's not his first film. Tarkovsky is a Soviet director, Russian Soviet era director. Did a lot of very artistic films. So this is from 1966, and it is a very long film. And there are actually two versions of it. There's the theatrical release, and then there's the version that he wanted, which is actually almost half an hour shorter, and it's still over 2.5 hours long. It's like a 3-hour long movie. It's a long movie. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about a couple of various elements of it, and then kind of what I really want to talk about is its narrative structure, because we've heard a lot from Irving. If you want to go through all our catalog, Irving talks a lot about his act structure and how to construct an act and how to construct a story out of that. And it's really great stuff, and Irving has talked a lot about it. But this is a film that I think does not do that. When I talk about what I think it does and why it is effective here, I'm not sure it would be effective in most other films, but it is effective here.
Cool.
So Yeah, so Andrei Rublev, he's a historical character, and though this is it's loosely based. The film is like loosely based on his life. Like it has real people that he like interacted with, real artists that he interacted with, but it's a completely fictional story. And Andrei Rublev, if you're not familiar with him, or Rublev, and it's going to be look like most of the time if you look on, you know, how it's spelled in English, you're going to see an E at the end. Look like it'll, Andrei Rublev. But technically in Russian, it's Rublev. For all sorts of historical and, or orthographical reasons. We're not going to get into Russian spelling and how it's represented in English. That's another really long story. Andrei Rublev is he was a I think 13th century approximately icon painter in Russia, and certainly the most famous Russian icon painter, if not the most famous icon painter ever.
Wow.
Yeah, very significant in the history of Christian art. So of course Russian Orthodox Church. Yeah, and his icons are still like the most revered icons out there, certainly from Russia, but if not, like pretty much the entire world. And again, there are a lot of characters in this film who are real artists, or were real artists at the time. Although most of them aren't really significant. The most significant one is Theophanes the Greek, who is also a real icon painter, also a significant person, icon painter, of a generation before Andrei Rublev. And I'm not actually sure whether they met, but their relationship in the film is very important. Okay, so basically we're following Andrei, and kind of sort of like this overview of his life from point he's already. It starts out he's already an established artist, and so that's basically what happens in the film, like the very basic premise. And as for like what actually happens, like what the plot is, I could get like in a really general way. Andrei progressively explores his relationship with art and Christianity and the world. And his very optimistic, humanistic view of the world is repeatedly challenged by really awful cruelty and violence, which besets, 14th, 13th century Russia. They basically these invading people from the steppes come in, and these two warring, the grand prince and his brother hate each other, so they all recruit these people from the steppes to come in and slaughter each other's cities. And okay, so his optimistic, humanistic worldview is very much challenged by violence, and by some other factors as well. And he basically stops painting and stops talking, and so he lives in life in silence. And then at the end, we get this almost completely unrelated story of a young boy whose father is like the chief bell maker of Moscow, and his father has died from the plague, and he's been commissioned to build like the bell to end all bells for the new cathedral. And the son says, "Hey, look, I can do this, right? Because I alone know my father's secrets of how to make a bell, although he doesn't know anything." So we follow his son trying to fake his way into making this bell, and the threat of death from the Grand Duke, right? If your bell doesn't work, we'll cut off your head and the heads of all the people who helped you make this gigantic bell. And then, but his success re-inspires Andrei to take up art again. And it's an entirely a black and white film until the very end. So I'm spoiling this. Major spoilers for what happens. But at the very end, Andrei has rededicated his life to art. And then it just ends with a bunch of color shots of his icons.
Wow.
So okay, that's basically what happens, and I'm not gonna go into all the specifics. So this is a really personal film for Andrei Tarkovsky. In fact, he in his edited shorter version, he actually calls it "The Passion According to Andrei." And now there's an episode within it called "The Passion According to Andrei," which obviously he shares the name with Andrei Rublev. He's also an artist facing the pressures of being an artist in the Soviet Union, right? In a really hostile environment, right? A very anti-Christian environment. So I think it's pretty clear that he identifies with Andrei Rublev. And right, so he actually calls it, The Passion According to Andrei, right? Both sort of, right, the character and himself.
Right.
Right. So really a very personal film for our director. And honestly, it's a pretty, I have a pretty personal relationship with it too. Because I see in myself, my own kind of growth as a artist and a Christian, and a Christian artist, right? I see myself, looking back, and I've been doing this a lot this last few months for various reasons, but really reflecting on my own kind of journey in both spirituality and in art. And I can really see myself moving from Theophan the Greek to Andrei over the last 15 years. It was kind of interesting that I can really identify with these characters, at least, or I could at certain points in my life. Okay, so it's an interesting film too. I don't really recommend this film if you have not seen a lot of more artistic films before. It's not a good first kind of artistic film to watch because first it is very unclear a lot of times what is happening. And I've had to watch it many times, rewatch scenes, and some of that is, I think the way that the dialogue works, it is very elliptical. Some of it is also just it's such a massive film, you forget which monk you're looking at, right? It just is that way.
Yeah.
And some of it I think is really intentional. I think it's supposed to have this air of mystery and it's not really clear. You're kind of, and we're gonna get into why this is, but it's almost you're kind of looking at a tiny snapshot of someone's life, and there's zero exposition ever in this film. So that's kind of confusing, right? The dialogue is often very, very precise. Even if you get it in translation, it's very precise, and it doesn't contain a lot. Like I said, there's zero exposition. So you kind of you're just staring at a moment in Andrei's life or a related character's life. And you kind of have to piece together for yourself what the relationship between people is. They're not gonna. There's nothing that's going to establish what those relationships are, or almost nothing. And it also begins rather cryptically. It begins from a scene from several decades earlier. It's completely unrelated to the film as well. Of some guy who's at a cathedral and he's trying to build a hot air balloon. And as he's about to do this, I guess somebody has alerted the local people, and they all come with their torches and whatever, and they start trying to beat and kill his assistants because flying is, that's something diabolic, right? Well, at least we assume that's why. We don't get any explanation of why everyone's coming up with pitchforks and torches. And this guy manages to get his hot air balloon up, and he's like, "Yay, I'm flying!" And he hadn't figured out how to land it, so he crashes and dies. All right, and then we just get an image of a horse, The horse falls, rolls on its back, tries to get up, and falls down again. That's the intro. And then we just jump into Andrei.
Are these kind of like story encapsulation moments, like where it's basically the whole story kind of in a pod, if that makes sense?
I'm not sure if that's the whole story. I think it's kind of context, right? It's like the guy who has this like aspiration to something beyond like the purely mundane and physical, right? And he's running up against the forces of it don't want that. They don't want transcendence, right? And he tries, but he fails, right? Like he achieves transcendence momentarily, but he is not prepared to like carry it forth with it. And then the horse, see the horse again at like kind of a turning point where we get like the complete slaughter of a city, and I don't remember which city it is, but the city that Andrei is in. And we see amidst a lot of human tragedy of various kinds, lots of death, lots of violence towards women. We get all of that, and then we get a very specific shot of a horse that is like up on a higher level. Like it's, I think, hit by an arrow and it falls down and dies. So the horse falling and not being able to get up or dying is also an important sort of just image that is there.
Right.
Right. So it's kind of a cryptic film, right? Like it's, like I said, it's not the first more like artistic film that I would recommend that you watch. It's also somewhat confusing because we're used to like time in cinema. I think, Irving, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're used to like time not being like 1 second that I watch in real time is 1 second in the film. We're used to that because we see like montages, or we're used to just like cuts, and and when we have after the cut, however much time ought to have passed has passed. Like we accept that, right?
Right.
But what Tarkovsky does is something that I'm not really sure that I've seen. I can think of having seen in a film, which is where, without cutting, cinema time does not equal real time, which is very confusing. So we'll see like a shot in the very first episode, so to speak, of Andrei's life. They go into this, it's pouring outside, they're traveling in the country, and they see a kind of like a bar. They go in to take shelter from the rain. We sit down, it's raining, and we pan from them, pan around the bar, and by the time we have panned back by 360 degrees, it is now several hours later. But it's not, we don't like know that immediately, so that is quite disorienting.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
It's quite disorienting how that happens. And again, if you like, I need to watch that scene a couple of times to understand like what, because something important happens in those several hours that have taken like 5 seconds, but we don't actually know that, and we don't actually know, although it eventually becomes clearer, it's not really revealed what major event happened in those 5 hours or however many hours in the 5 seconds. It's not revealed what actually happened until like the very end of the film, when we have the whole Bellmaker episode. So you got to get through several hours of actual film to understand what event transpired in that 5 seconds. Right. So again, it is not like the most user-friendly, watcher-friendly film. Right. The first time you watch it. All right. So all of that aside, and I think that's really interesting because I can't think of any film that operates like that, where like cinema time does not equal real time.
Excuse me. Without
like cutting or montaging.
The only thing I can think of sometimes is time will get compressed in a conversation. But I don't think that's the same. That's not the same kind of effect you're talking about. Like sometimes you'll have like a diner conversation, and the sun will set faster than it should, or something.
Right.
To kind of speed up time. But I don't think that's what you're saying.
No,
really.
And so we get that kind of thing throughout this film. Just like odd, like time doesn't work the way that we expect it to work.
Sounds like Nolan would would take inspiration from this style of total storytelling.
Yeah. So it's very very unique, at least in my experience. Challenging, but like once you understand what is happening, it's very fascinating. Okay, so now this is related to the structure of the narrative structure, right? Like I said, leading off, Irving is always talking about acts. And I don't think that is the way that this film is designed, right? Irving, you can chime in here, but from having heard you now for years at this point talking about this, my understanding is an act is kind of like an irrevocable action, or like event that has occurred, and it is like often involves some kind of choice, right? Something that can't be undone, and now the story is like an inflection point, right?
Right.
I would not define that as being the way that this operates.
Cool.
So I think the first way I would try to conceive of how this works is just the fact that Tarkovsky himself calls it the passion according to Andrei, right? Like the same term used, like the gospel according to John, right?
Right.
I think that's quite deliberate. Now, we literally have at one point an kind of a theological argument between the painter, icon painter Theophon the Greek, and Andrei, talking about like sin and is man sinful, and if Christ came back to earth, would we re-crucify him? And
yes.
During this, Andrei's response is to give his own, he narrates the passion essentially. And we actually see this, like Christ as a Russian going to be crucified, and the Russian peasants are crucifying him. So we actually have that in there, the passion of Christ. But beyond that, so passion, right? Suffering. There's a lot of suffering in this film, but I think there's that deliberate gospel sort of storytelling, which is not like a Shakespeare play, right? If you read any of the gospels, they're all different, of course, but they're not told in as Shakespeare tells, writes Hamlet, right? It's kind of like, here's an event, here's another event. Maybe especially if we have John, we'll kind of have an explanation of like a kind of high level theological explanation, or maybe we'll have an explanation of this parable, or maybe we won't have an explanation of this parable. And all four gospels are kind of retelling the same events, but they contradict each other a lot. But the fundamental of Christ died and was resurrected, but how that happened, who saw what when, it's all kind of fuzzy, sort of, right? We all have different opinions of what happened, different understandings of what happened. I think there's some element of that going on. And I also think it's important that Andrei Rublev is an icon painter. So it's divided, I think, into, maybe I'm wrong with the number, but I think there are 9 separate episodes, so to speak, and they all have a title and a year and and a month or whatever, that make up this film. And I think that the way that I would look at these is almost that, because within each one, I don't think you could say that they're all an act, or that any inflection point happens in most of them. Maybe 1 or 2 do, but they're more, like I said, just kind of a flat sort of snapshot of life. And to me, I think the most helpful way to understand what's happening here is that they're almost like filmic icons. So I have some a little bit of interest in Christian iconography, and I have some really good books by Rowan Williams that my friend, actually Irving, also friend of Irving, Kelsey, sent to me about icons, including some of Andrei Rublev's icons. And he talks a lot about like what an icon is, right? And why if you look at an icon, it's different than like a painting of say like Jesus, right? Why are they different? And again, I'm not the most knowledgeable person on this, but I will take some of his ideas and like what an icon is. So in brief, icons kind of developed in the East, and they're originally the idea is kind of born of a struggle between people who said you can't depict God because God is infinite, right? And it's simple to try and depict God, right? And so how can you pick Jesus then, right? Because Jesus is both man and God. And the response is that, well, we have these icons where, Christ is both fully human and fully man, right? Or sorry, fully divine and fully human, right? And he can be both at the same time because he has his human form, but it is fully kind of saturated with divinity. And in the same way, an icon is something that is material, but is fully saturated with divinity. Okay. So such that Rowan Williams says that a true icon is not so much a work of art, but is actually a visual prayer, right? That it is intentionally flattened, right? They have like it's not very like they don't have a lot of 3D depth to what's going on, right? Is that Andrei Rublev's that's I think it's most famous the three angels that visit Abraham.
Okay. Oh, that's an interesting passage.
Yeah. So I think that's Andrei Rublev's most famous icon. It was intentionally flattened because we're not supposed to like be worrying about details of realism. We're supposed to allow the things of heaven to kind of be drawn down to earth and us up to heaven through them. We're not distracted by like, oh, well, is Jesus's nose too big or whatever? Like, we're not supposed to worry about that, right? Everything in it is supposed to be done, intentionally and like through an act of prayer. And we get this discussion in the film, right? Andrei's talking to his apprentice helper, and he's like, "Look, you're really a talented painter." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm like the best at mixing color blue." And he's like, "Yeah, you can make a really great blue, which is apparently a hard color of time to mix properly." He's like, "Great, you're really talented, like physically, but you don't like care about the religious aspect at all. You never pray." And he's like, "Yeah, why do I need to? I can paint really well." And he's like, "See, you're not quite getting like what it is to paint an icon, right? Yeah, it's sure, Andrei's known as being a really talented painter too, but that's not what makes his work so famous." So we have that discussion in the film, actually. Right, so it's all done. Every kind of line and gesture in an icon is supposed to allow us to see something like beyond what is just physically there, right? It's pointing to a higher reality. So I kind of think that is the way that we ought to look at what happens in this film. Each kind of scene, right? Each one of these episodes is almost like an icon, right? And it's got this air of mystery to it, as I've already talked about. We have like the playing with time. We have no exposition, right? Kind of cryptic dialogue sometimes. And it's often not like I said, it's not an act structure. It's like, sometimes it's just like this is a long conversation with no resolution between Theophon the Greek and Andrei about whether a man is just like inherently sinful and evil or not. It doesn't really have a resolution. It just ends, and then we've jumped 2 years, and Andrei is now painting a chapel, right?
Right.
So, individually, maybe each episode isn't that interesting, like plot wise. But I think that, like, in the way that an icon is kind of like this sort of like kind of flat capturing of like a moment in life that is meant to like draw us to higher things and higher things down to us. I think that's kind of what's going on here, right? Each episode is like revolves around some kind of truth about humanity, although they're not always like that clear at first what they're about, right? Some of them are more obvious than others. At one point, Andrei is out, I guess, wandering in the village with a couple of other monks, and he runs into these pagans who are having this festival celebrating like the pagan love goddess, and he fakes, I guess, like that he got lost, and he goes and like watches them. So he's curious. He wants to like understand humanity, right, in all of its like beauty despite it not being like always, according to church law. He wants to just understand humanity, right? And like he doesn't. His point, the big thing about Andrei is that he doesn't think that humanity is evil, right, or inherently evil at first, and this gets challenged later. But he feels like that humanity is fundamentally good and savable, right, as opposed to the Aphanos of Greek. So right after he has this discussion about, right, whether man is evil or not, right, he goes and he watches these pagans. They end up capturing him. Like, oh wow, we've captured a priest, right, or a monk, right? And they try and kill him, but then this woman, tries to like seduce him. It's like, if I seduce you, then I'll let you free. And like, anyway, he ends up letting him free. And then the Russian army soldiers come and find them and like kill all the pagans. And he watches from afar. And after his traveling companions find him again, and they're like, "Wow, isn't it great that they're all being burned alive?" And he doesn't say anything. Okay, so that's maybe a little more obvious, like what's sort of the spiritual, I don't know if it's spiritual truth, but like what is meant to be conveyed there. They're not all that obvious. Because like individual episodes, right? So to me, especially like once you look at the entirety of the film, I think it becomes easier to understand each individual moment, right? And it's kind of, to me, like the key of understanding these is like little icons. Almost in the way then that like at the very end of the film we see like all of these icons of his in color, right, with like really majestic music. It's kind of like we've just seen this like over the last 3 hours, right? We have these icons, and like in some, they all kind of reveal something about the entirety and about each one. They all kind of shed light on each other, and like now you're kind of seeing like this, tapestry of real icons that he really painted, and it's kind of what Tarkovsky has done, right? He's given us this like platter of icons in kind of cinematic form for us to ponder the realities, and like what does it mean to be a Christian and an artist in a world that doesn't always like art and doesn't always like Christianity and doesn't always like Christian art. And what does it mean, right? What is the purpose of art if you're a Christian, right? And Andrei has to let that go and then like rediscover it by the end. Like he comes to the conclusion, ultimately, I think that art should lift up our spirits to the divine, and should bring joy to people, right? He struggles with this earlier on. He's asked to paint the Last Judgment in hell in order to scare people into not sin. He's like, I don't want to scare people into not sinning. I don't like terrifying people. There's already too much terror in the world. Why do I need to scare them about hell? I think that's his ultimate conclusion, right? Is that art should like lift us up and not like terrify us. It should bring us joy. I mean, that's why he sees the effect like the ringing of the bell has on all these people who are all happy, right? Like, wow, it's so cool, right? It's beautiful, a bell. It's like, wow, art can like actually touch people, right? There's a lot of evil in the world that he knows firsthand. But art is at least momentarily something that can bring joy and moments of transcendence to people, and that for him makes it worth recommitting his life to painting icons. So Yeah, I think that's the way I want to view it. The film is not like a, here's an act and the story progresses in this way. I mean, ultimately, yes, there is sort of a conclusion to it, um, but it's not like the story is like moved in a line there. It's almost like each individual episode you could view on its own, like
Right.
after having received the key to all of it, right? You can kind of look at each thing individually, and it's almost its own self-contained thing, right? And it takes on additional meaning in light of everything else, but it's its own sort of, you don't need all this exposition, right? It's just there. Um, so, and again, I also think it has that sort of like, wants to also be a story that's told in sort of the way the gospel, probably I think is closest to the gospel of Saint John, right? I think it's probably closest to like that sort of storytelling, a sort of mystical, like we have these events and they have some kind of significance, um, but it's not like told in a very clear like, here's event X and event Y and like this is what happened here, and like those mundane details are not that important in the Gospel of John. Not that there are like a ton of them in the Synoptic Gospels, but you know, it has that kind of air of like elevated mystery to it. So I think that's also sort of what is going on in the film, and I'm not sure that would be like a strategy that would be very effective in most other kinds of filmmaking. Um, but in a 3 hour, experience, so to speak, in cinematic experience where we're literally being asked to like view the life of an icon painter. Um, I think it kind of works there if you have some sense of like some understanding of what an icon is, and you're willing to let go of like the way that most other films work narrative wise. I think it's really effective for like the kind of thing that Tarkovsky is going for, and I don't know that like just kind of having a more conventional like narrative by kind of historical fiction sort of biography of him, of Andrei Rublev. I don't think that would have worked as well for conveying the artistic message, right? You could probably make it much clearer, like what happens in his life. But the point, that's not what's important, right? What happens in his life is not that of great interest to us. Um, we're not meant to be that concerned with like, oh well, what actually happened to the girl that he saves from the enemy soldier, and then eventually she's kidnapped by him. Like we're not really meant to worry that much about it. Like you could imagine in a normal, more conventional film, we'd want to know those details. Um, but that's not so crucial to the actual like message about or transcendent things that I think Tarkovsky is going for.
Would you because it doesn't sound like, and especially after playing the trailer, it doesn't look like either. But it all kind of reminds me of the way Malick does stuff as well. I don't know if that's a comparison that's valid at all.
Yeah, I think. Well, I'd certainly think that having seen Malick like prepared me for this. Although I have seen a lot of other Tarkovsky films first, and like to me, they all well most of Tarkovsky's films operate in the same sort of way. Not so much like narrative structure. They had different kind of narrative structures, but like playing with time certainly, and like the non like one-to-one aspect of time, he loves that. Um, yeah, I don't know that like I can think of an example of Malick quite doing the same sort of like episodic icon-esque sort of thing, but that this sort of like attempt to not have like a narrative that works 100% conventionally, or even if it works like you could define it in your act, it's working in your act structure. It's not like a traditional like linear narrative exactly. Like watch like To the Wonder. I mean, it's linear, right?
Yeah.
For the most part. Maybe there are a few like flashback-esque moments in it, but the thrust of the story is pretty much forward. Um, but it's not like told in the way that like most, I don't know how to describe it, but it's not told in the way that
Yeah, it's
most
like
films are.
it's poetic in a way versus like more prosaic in a way.
Yeah, and I think that's something that these two directors have in common. They're trying to like go for something more elevated and like do it in a kind of poetic way. Go get to that message in a poetic way. Like you can watch Star Wars and it has a nice message about like, good versus evil. But it's a great film. I love Star Wars, but it's not like told in a way that is like highly poetic. Right? We understand Star Wars pretty. It doesn't work fundamentally differently than like any other blockbuster works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I really love the film. It resonates a lot with me. I highly recommend watching it, especially I have the Criterion Collection version of it. A lot of
Sweet.
extra stuff. Great. I highly recommend watching it if you have any interest and you have some time to like sit down. It has some graphic stuff in it. That's not the point, but it is there. So there's that warning. And I kind of gave away, the end, but I don't know that like the end is that crucial to know. Really,
Yeah.
It's more like what is happening in each of these icons, so to speak. That is, I think, of ultimate interest in the film.
Man, I hate to get into it. I think there's going to be a point at which I put in my first Tarkovsky disc, and it's going to be like when I was going through Hitchcock, and I'm just going to tear through them, through a bunch of them, because this sounds so up my alley in terms of subject matter, even, like, obviously, but also just being interesting. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. So that's all I have on my attempt at mixed media movies. So thanks for watching and listening. And special thanks to our supporters on Locals, Kay Kairos, Alex Egbert, 909 Crime, and Post. You can join them and supporting us for $5 a month. You can also join our Discord, mixedmediapodcast.com. And stick around for more conventional mixed media movies. I almost said music. Mixed media movies, Arguing with Reddit with Irving.
Sweet. I just actually had an idea because this film, I think, I'm like 99% sure is, what do you call that? Copyright. What's the word for it when the copyright expires, basically?
Oh, I don't know about that, but you can find it online for free. I think it's a Moss Film,
yes,
versus Len Film, but both Moss Film and Len Film like regularly post their like archived films on their YouTube channels, so you can find. Which I don't remember whether it's Moss Film or Len Film, but if you look them up on YouTube, it is on YouTube.
Yes, Moss. I didn't know Len Film also did that, but I subbed to Moss Film, and it's crazy how many translations they even put out, dubbed even, a lot of these classic films out. So no matter what language you speak, you can watch these films.
Yeah, they do have subtitles for this one. I don't know that they dub it.
Might not want to do that anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure you'd want to, but
yeah,
it is there with English translation.
Yes. So what's interesting about that, though, is we could do a watch party through the Discord YouTube app thingy. We might be able to all watch it, although it would be quite the journey. It would be very long, yeah. So maybe not the best candidate. I'm not sure, but that's an idea. Cool. All right, so last is Arguing with Reddit, so here we go.
Mixed Media Movies.
And welcome back to Mixed Media Movies again. last section was Ben talking about Andrei Rublev, which was super cool, super interesting. I can't wait to watch it. But right now, I've got to answer some hot takes because that's what Arguing with Reddit is about. But before we begin, we should reintroduce ourselves for those just tuning in. So my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella based out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania.
Hi, my name is Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and media composer.
My name is Nathan Nestor. I'm a 3D modeler and video game developer. Before we continue, I just want to say, I don't know if you noticed last segment. I am very out of it.
Oh, no.
I didn't have a good sleep last night because I think it was too warm in the room, too hot, I guess, in the room, and it's just not happening. So the tiredness is catching up in mid podcast. I was like, I don't know how much I can contribute here, but
okay, we'll forgive you. Okay, actually, I'll start with let's see. I'll start with my own here. Where is the chat? How do I pull up the chat? Where is it? There it is. There we go. I'll start with my own here, and this one was about film adaptations, and I actually just found the first comment interesting, even though there's actually not that much talk on this topic, but whatever. Cool prompt. So we'll do that. Let's see here if I can pull it up. So this one here is... Oh, there we go. This one's from r/film. It says, film adaptations, what are your thoughts? I'm a film student and I'm currently looking into film adaptations and what makes them popular amongst audiences, in particular video games being adapted into film. Lol. Or a TV series. HBO's The Last of Us and Prime's Fallout, for example. Are those battle tested? Do we know whether they're liked or not? I'm not sure. They're really new shows. I have done a lot of research so far, but I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. What makes an adaptation successful? Do you think they are necessary? These are just a couple of questions to kick things off, but anything is welcome. And then the first comment here, Kai says, Fallout has been well received so far from what I hear. Wow, that's new. But it's a show, so unfortunately, very low probability I will check it out. I want to see a good video game movie. I want to see that happen. Let's see. So the first comment here I thought was interesting because it's the exact opposite of what was said. They said, lean into the source material. That's not the opposite. That's fine. Don't try to correct it for the language of the new medium. And I highly disagree. I highly disagree. As I talked about in the last episode when I was talking about video games and story, that there's necessarily adaptation, that goes on into mediums. But just in general, in this concept of adaptations, there's nothing wrong with adaptations. Are they necessary? I mean, you should have a good reason to tell the adaptation, There could be a lot of reasons. It could be that not many people are exposed to it and you're trying to bring more notoriety to a story, or it could be that it could benefit from a different medium, or something like this. But there should be generally a reason. Don't do the Disney where you just live action every animated film for literally no reason at all, other than you just want to take parents' money, or something. I don't know. Have some compelling reason to tell your story in a new way. That's what I would say about that. But other than that, there's nothing wrong with adaptations. So many films are adaptations, and so many great films are adaptations. Now, in terms of how do you do a good adaptation, well, you make a good film, which is kind of cheeky, but I mean, honestly, you start with the principles of film and you work your way out just like any other film. You don't do it the other way around, unless... the only caveat is if you're trying to be a little bit more experimental with it, maybe, and see how you can make an analog for something that a novel can do, but a film cannot. I don't know. But generally speaking, you're making a good film. So if you're making a good film, you should make a good film. There's not actually more complicated than that, so it means you have to write a good script. That means that it has to be a good script as a film script. You can't actually read people's minds. This is one of the biggest problems in film. It's actually quite the challenge if you start writing films, especially if you read a lot. your instinct is to try to expose people's thoughts, and you realize you can't do that. Not without like narration voices or something like this, which are fine. But if you don't want that, then you can't do that. So you write a good script based off of the source material, which necessarily means you're going to have to change stuff for it to be effective. Or in most cases, it means this. It actually does necessarily mean so. Even if you're taking a play and making it a movie, even if it's word for word, scene for scene, exactly the same, an audience has different vantage points. Stages have different kinds. Like it's all different. So you still have to work in the new medium. So that's what I would say. It's actually not that complicated. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Anything else you guys have to say?
Yeah, definitely the top comment is whack. I don't know. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, no, that's wrong.
I mean, how would you do that? Like, not adapt, like, not take your video game and like adapt it to the medium of a film. Like, wouldn't that just be like, I don't know, watching someone stream the game on Twitch?
Exactly. Like, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't really get it. You have different constraints, as we talked about last episode, so there's just gonna be different choices you have to necessarily make, and you have to make good choices. Don't make video game choices if you're making a show or a movie. Make movie or show choices. You know, that's pretty much it. Kai says, Kai says, what does it even mean? Does that mean don't consider the medium when telling a story, or does it just mean don't dumb down the lore? Let me see. Maybe I misunderstood it. Don't try to correct it for the language of the new medium. I guess it could kind of go either way. My natural reading of it was because they're talking about mediums, I thought they meant, the core structure. But actually, if they're talking about lore, yeah, I mean, even that though, it might still be necessary, and that might upset people. And that's a decision you're still going to have to make. Now, I think a lot of times when you get dumbed down lore, it ends up not being necessary, which is what's annoying. Not just annoying, it's infuriating when you have good source IP and you end up just dumbing it down for no other reason than, I don't know, you think your audience is dumber than they actually are. Most audiences are way smarter than you actually think, at least on an intuitive level. So, yeah, I think in most common cases, you end up seeing lore dumbed down more than it should be because the corporate boardrooms think that should be the case, when that's not normally the case. But sometimes you actually do need to make that decision for concision or other. There's many reasons you can make this decision. For example, if I were making a movie about the inheritance cycle universe, there's a huge problem about this as the movie. The Aragon movie that actually came out, that's horrible. Probably meme worthy. I should watch it again. Learned is that, wow, this story has like telepathy in it. That's kind of hard through film to pull off telepathy in a good way. I mean, you could hear the voices on screen, but if you don't have a good plan for how to represent this lore in this new medium, and maybe some medium translations of this lore, then it's going to look very corny as characters kind of stare into each other's eyes without moving their mouths.
Some of the telepathy isn't even like spoken word, right? Just,
yeah, a lot of there's a lot of non-spoken telepathy in the inheritance cycle. There's even mental battles in the inheritance cycle. How do you even represent a mental battle on screen? I mean, that would be a tough problem for me to solve. I don't even know how I'd even approach that. So yeah, I mean, medium matters. Definitely. Kai says you have to dumb it down a little. Yeah, it depends. Yeah. All right. This next one's from Nathan, if you want to explain.
Sure. Let's see. Yeah, this is from r/movies. The title is films where the villain's death is heartbreaking. And so this person mentions Starro in the Suicide Squad, and saying that is a villain's death that fulfills that, and that's pretty much it. So that is the prompt.
My answer is going to be kind of funny. Black Panther, because I knew the IP after that was going nowhere. The villain in Black Panther was the most interesting part of that story, and he dies for no reason, and I'm still salty. The villain in Black Panther is Killmonger, and there's this very interesting angle that they're exploring of like relative disadvantage, right? That the Black Panther series kind of like completely ignores. Like it ends with him just dying, and so we don't finish the theme exploration. You're like, oh, what? And then they like, I'm sorry, this is a rant in of itself. and then the solution to this theme is they go to Harlem, and it's even funny just saying it out loud, because I don't think people process what how Black Panther ended and how absurd it is. We're having this struggle that's literally killing people, like they're killing each other over this, and the whole point of the villain is why don't you help your neighbor African countries? That's the entire point. And the movie ends with Black Panther and family going to Harlem and it's opening a non-profit in Harlem. I'm sorry, but that's one way to dodge a theme. That's one way to dodge a theme entirely.
Yeah, I think to expound on that, for those who haven't watched the movie, like, or don't understand the general premise, the nation of focus is like really wealthy. Yeah. Is the idea, and it's just in Africa, surrounded by poorer nations, and so like the villain is like, hey, what's wrong with you? and the hero's like, no, and whatever, they have a little like, ideological.
The hero has no response. The hero has no response.
Well, his response is the status quo, I suppose. I don't know. But
you have a point, but I'm still gonna kill you.
To be fair, the villain does. Well, yeah, the villain doesn't like. He's not like he uses his words. He like decides that he's gonna take over the country. So there's that.
I mean, I don't think you can dispute that he's like the villain of the story. Like he's not like an objectively like morally good.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. Yeah, no, he's definitely the villain.
I think the part that makes it worse is that they kind of concede on the issue of like, oh yeah, we should help people, but like they go to Harlem, like they just leave the continent that he's talking about, and rather than doing something big with their massive amounts of wealth, whatever, like I remember there's like a basketball court, right? So they show off like a basketball court in Harlem, right? I don't know about Harlem. I'm assuming there are actually multiple basketball courts in Harlem currently as we speak. So I don't know. I wish that was something.
Why don't you go to like the International Lindy Hop Championships, which are in Harlem, because that's where Lindy Hop is from. And like, no, I mean, the International Lindy Hop Championships, they've been like growing, globally. Like they have like the European version and the legislative Latin American version. Leading up to the World Finals in Harlem, and it's like, how can we like incorporate other cultures, but like also, continue the legacy from, of the Harlem Renaissance at the same time, like actually exploring these things, right?
Yeah.
I would say that'd be more worthy than a basketball court, probably. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It would at least been more like unexpected. But they literally show up and we're like, we're gonna start a non-profit in Harlem. It's like, were you listening this entire time? Like, I could understand what you're talking about. Kai says, oh, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, he says, what Ben is saying is the Black Panther sequel should have been a Lindy Hop movie, but then supervillains attack. I mean, yeah, why not? I mean, if we're gonna like just do some random like lip service, like, oh, Harlem, right? Yeah, that makes everything okay. Then like, why don't we actually have like an art form that comes from Harlem and like is still a somewhat of a global force? Yeah,
that makes a lot more sense off the bat. That we built a basketball court. I'm sorry, people, but that breaks my heart. I think this actually qualifies for this question, because it broke my soul. Because I don't. Hey, hot take. Black Panther is a very average movie. It only ends up being above average in my rankings because of the for what it is nature of it, right? Because it's a Marvel movie, and for what Marvel's movies are, they're all average. So it was actually slightly better than most of them, so it gets slightly above most of them, because it actually was slightly more interesting. The music was a little bit more interesting. I actually remembered it, unlike almost any other Marvel movie. The concept was more interesting, and the theme actually was interesting up until the end. And then they killed the villain. And in fact, not only does he die, guys, he literally dies in front of the hero, and he's not like, "Can I help you?" Like, "Can I?" Like, they're having this deep conversation, and he's looking at the sunset. I'm like, bruh, just go find him a doctor. I don't understand what's happening here. Like, what are you doing? It's like he gets stabbed. It's not even like, I mean, he might die anyway, but like, I mean, my natural response is, go get a doctor. What are you doing? This guy's like confessing his soul to you. You guys having a moment, you realize that he doesn't need to die right now. I thought that's what's happening in this conversation. And then he just leaves him to die.
Well, maybe the response from the director would be like, well, it'll just be like Star Wars, right? You know, you have like the end of Revenge of the Sith, right? Padme is dying, and they're like, there's nothing medically wrong with her, but she has lost the will to live.
Oh boy. Kai says, I thought he offered to help. Oh, maybe I'm forgetting. I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe I was so in shock as to what was happening at the end of the movie, I stopped listening.
Yeah, I can't. I don't remember. Maybe he did, and then there you go. He lost the will to live.
Exactly. Oh boy, that was heartbreaking because Michael B. Jordan's a beast of an actor too. He ate that movie well beyond anyone else on the screen. Like, I mean, demolished the rest of them. He's a great actor. So I wanted to see more Michael B. Jordan being a villain, because then I would have been like, oh, I want to go see that. You know, that's worth my time and talking to my friends about. But no, they had to kill him. I assume Michael B. Jordan didn't actually want to be perpetually a Marvel villain. I think that's probably the reason for his death. But it'll always be heartbreaking to me. Which is not really what this question was asking about, probably, but I can't. Let's see what suggestions we have here. Roy Batty and
clarified something, by the way. He said, "To be fair, quote, let me help you," followed by quote, "No," is almost essay as just not offering.
Bruh, you're like, you don't get to choose whether you die. I'm taking you. That's what you should have said. I'm taking you. Oh my gosh. So crazy. They go to Harlem and establish a place in his name. I'm sorry, that's just so ridiculous. Americans. Roy Batty from Blade Runner. Roy Batty. Wait, who's that? Am I forgetting Blade Runner?
That's the principal antagonist, right?
Oh yeah. Why don't I remember him?
Tears in the Rain, right?
Yes, I remember him now. Yes. Hot take: Blade Runner's overrated, and I'll leave it at that. That's a really hot take right there. I found it to be okay. I thought it was fine. Visually awesome, but I didn't really care about the story. Sorry. So I didn't really care when the villain died.
I can't believe what I'm seeing here. So we have, I mentioned a few episodes ago or something like that, that I thought that one of the best intro. I think we're talking about intro, or no, we're talking about monologues. I think I cited Davy Jones, right? And so that most people don't take the series of Pirates of the Caribbean very seriously, and I suppose I don't really either. But not, it's not like a, I don't know. It's very like, it's just not like a, I don't know. It's not like a richly, lore-filled, adventure or whatever. It's kind of just like whatever. But the thought came up again. I was like, there's no way anyone's thinking this. And then I'm scrolling down, and it's the first thing I've seen that has two people saying it. I was like, no way.
Wow. Yeah. So let's see what else we got here. We got Penguin in Batman Returns. Oh gosh, I don't sympathize with Penguin in Batman Returns. What a freaky little character. Doesn't he? What does he do? He does something truly disturbing. He like bites someone's like digit off or something. I don't remember. I didn't really feel anything. What is it? We was kind of sad seeing the little penguins walking away with his body to the water. Bro, I was rooting for it, so I don't know what you're talking about. Gonna sound odd, but oh wait, no, I read that. Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man 2. I don't know, man. That guy was weird. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that one. I get it though, because there's a little sappy scene as he's dying. I do understand what you're saying. Yeah, the quote, "I will not die a monster." Yeah, okay. I'm Hotep in The Mummy Returns. Haven't seen The Mummy Returns. Andrew and Chronicle have not seen that. Darth Vader. I mean, what do you think about that, Ben?
I don't think it's sad. I don't remember. Seb's original question is like sad.
Is films where the villain's death is heartbreaking.
Oh. I mean, it's almost like if he doesn't die, like it won't go very well for him, you know? Like, okay, you know, maybe Luke feels like, yay, my father is redeemed, but like I don't think the New Republic is going to treat him very well. You know? He's kind of like a beyond war criminal, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, those are interesting ideas. I can't think of... I'm really bad at thinking of examples of things off the top of my head, as I've said many times before, but I was trying to look at my DVD or Blu-ray collection, and nothing is coming to mind right now, so... the biggest thing I can think of is actually perhaps a monster in a monster movie, like Godzilla and Kong Skull Island. But I think that's for like black humor reasons, you know, just morbidly funny. Okay, this last one comes from Ben. If you want to explain.
Yeah. This is kind of an observation the person is making. This person says, anyone else sick of a low distribution for foreign animated films? They basically said that they were really excited to see that this new animated film, Chicken for Linda, was being released in the United States, but that the nearest theater showing it was 25 miles away. And then they also saw that movie Mars Express is coming out, but the nearest theater showing it to them is 43 miles away. But a lot of the responses are like, and if you're getting any foreign animated films in a theater that's like within 50 miles of you, that's really good.
Yeah. I actually think I've been exploring this idea on the podcast before as I relay box office numbers, but like foreign films are about to, if film in the United States survives this coming recession, which is kind of dubious, which is sad to say. We don't want to go to the way of the dodo here, but you know, if it does survive, it'll likely be because of foreign films. And that's crazy to say because the United States is obviously the capital of film. This is basically our art form in terms of the nativity of it, and it's such an Americana art form. Culturally speaking, this is kind of one of the things that glues us together as Americans is cinema. And I think in our sort of post-World War II world, we kind of treat art like it kind of comes in cycles, which has just never been the case in history. Not in the way that we do it today. It was like commoditized, right? And it's kind of like, oh well, film died. That's funny. We have VR now. Like, you know, that kind of mentality is anti-tradition, right? It's a kind of an anti cultural outlook. But that ramble aside, I'm happy for foreign films to come save us because I don't want to lose this art form, this precious art form. And it's been great films like Parasite was I think the thing that kind of kicked the door open for foreign films. in general, which was great to see. Asia in general is kicking our butts. Like, oh my gosh. Like, I mean, obviously there's been a huge, long tradition in Japan of cinema that is very well acclaimed. And, you know, especially with anime and stuff like this, if you're talking about more recently. And that's all great. And I'm happy for our butts to get kicked because I kind of think we need it before we have economic troubles. We need to have the competition, the heat turned on in Hollywood. Now, they don't want the heat to be turned on, right? So they don't really want to be challenged by foreign films because that's bad for the studio system. So, but it's not bad for the theaters. And this is something I've been talking about for a long time. The theaters have no gumption at all. Like, they don't take destiny into their own hands and say, nah, studio system, we're going to make sure this art form lives because all of our real estate, just on a practical level, all of our real estate is practically useless without this medium. So we're going to make sure that it lives, and they're not doing that. And this is a symptom of that, that they're not doing that. They should be looking everywhere. I mean, if they want to look within the borders of our country first, fine. But if there's perfectly great films that Americans will watch, as has been proven already, I mean, Godzilla did numbers, and that was a Japanese film. Like, everything was in Japanese. There was nothing American about it at all. It did numbers. It was the talk of the town when it came out. To me, still, when did that come? Was that 2024? I believe so. I think the beginning of this year.
I think so. Yeah.
Best new release I've seen this year. Still. Kicks everything's butt, and it's just a classic summer blockbuster that happened in the winter. And not only was it a classic blockbuster, but it actually filled the soul. You could tell this from conversation that was happening on social media about Godzilla, where people were like, I forgot when, like, dads were, like, real dads in movies. Like, I forgot that could be, like, a thing, you know what I mean? Where they're not just, like, the butt of every joke or something, where there's, like, something, like, positive about masculinity, right? And all this kind of stuff, this idea of sacrifice, this idea of, like, what a nation is and what culture is, and all these really good questions from a blockbuster monster movie. That shows you how starving we are, for this kind of stuff. And the studio system does not want this. They want to transfer everything to streaming instead. And we've talked about many times on the show how that's a dead end. It's necessarily a dead end. The recession that's coming up, the recession that we're in, is going to shake those numbers like crazy. And it'll be a test as to whether the studio system will basically repent and turn back, or the movie theaters will actually grow spine and say, you don't own me anymore, to the studios, particularly Disney, which is the biggest cancer on the theaters themselves because of the way they manipulate openings and showings and control the overall year's schedule through monopoly, basically. And they say, you don't own me because I'm just going to import your competition. Come back to me when you've got something, and I'm very pro that, basically. And unfortunately, it's not happening because the theaters are the least creative, most beige suit, boring, milk toast without a single modicum of courage at all. They won't fight the studio system because my Disney makes me the minimum sales I need every year to keep the lights on, when they know they're leading them down the path to death. So, I don't know. I'm sick of it too, basically. I am sick of it. I agree. These things do need wide releases because there's nothing else in the theater. What else are you showing? I don't understand, So I'm with this post for sure. Good hot take. Yeah. All right.
Some chats.
Oh, good.
Relating to the last thing about Come Hunger, Kai says, Next time I'm in NYC, I'm going to visit the Killmonger Center for Youth Sports.
One of the most lulz endings to a film of all time.
I'll say, I feel like he didn't have to name himself Killmonger. That's a little.
Well, that's what the comics name him, right? I assume.
No, yeah, I mean, as in, I don't know, like where the name comes from, as in, like why he's named that in the comics. But if he gave himself that name, that's kind of crazy.
It's a little corny.
Yeah. And then relating to this. It's relating to the. Sorry. So that was for. Oh yeah. That was the last. The second take. Okay. And also relating to the second post, he says, honestly, anime spoiler redacted, right into some heartbreak.
Probably about some villain, I assume. Yeah. Oh yeah, anime villains. I didn't even think about that. Oh, that's probably a whole can of worms in of itself. I haven't done enough anime reviews. I will fix that. This going with the foreign film theme. I will watch more. I will watch some Tarkovsky. I will watch whatever. I'm sick of these stupid Americans who don't respect their own medium. Disgusting. So I just might avoid the French as a warning. I don't tend to like the French. So we'll see how that goes. All right. With that, this was an awesome show. If you liked what you saw, please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of these. We only post once a week, people. Like, subscribing is the most easy, like, your inbox is not going to be flooded with shorts. Probably should be, but it's not flooded with shorts or, clips or anything like this. This is just the live stream. And when you subscribe, all you get is the notification for when we go live so that you don't miss it. If you also want to get general updates about how the show is going and continue the conversation beyond the show, you can go to our Discord by hitting the link in the description, or go to mixedmediapodcast.com to see any link you could possibly want to see. Kai says, what if the French made an anime? It'd be even more perverted somehow than let me get into it. The French are very, very weird. Let me put it that way. Yeah, and fake deep, but those are hot takes, I'm sure. And if you want to support the show, you can go to mixedmediapodcast.com. Thank you to Kai, who's in the chat, 99 Crime, Post, and Alex Egbert for supporting us for $5 a month. It's only $5 a month. Most people's support plans are like $10 a month minimum. And I'm not saying that because we deserve it. I'm just saying that if you enjoy any of this, even if you want to just throw $5 our way and just sign up and quit, like, that's totally fine. It really helps us, because one of the things that's really hard about running a podcast in 2024 is there's no organic reach. Zero. There are people out there, I know this because I do this for a living, there are people out there who would enjoy this content very much so. But we don't have good organic reach because the algorithms, it's not even the algorithm like people talk about. It's just the mechanics of how these platforms are attempting to make money today. It does not behoove them to give organic reach out for free, right? So it's a pay-to-play system, and we want to make a good play. Yes. So if you support us for $5 a month, we're going to be making a push at some point to make sure this podcast is a little bit more visible. But it's going to take money and time and planning and all that kind of stuff. So if you enjoy it, and if you can't do that, share an episode that you enjoyed, please, with someone who you think might enjoy it. Because the hardest part about this weird setup that we have is that person who I know exists, because I can find them in the metrics, who is really interested in cross arts, I don't know how you want to call it, like, this kind of cross-pollination of the arts kind of thing.
Mixed media?
Mixed media, right? The person who's into this kind of stuff is hard to reach because I'm trying to kind of pull needles out of haystacks, right? There's a lot of those needles, but you gotta have to pull them out of the haystack, and that's kind of difficult. So if you already know a needle, please share the show with them, so that that would help us even more probably than any particular dollar would. So yeah, that's my plea. And we'll see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Or Friday.
Oh, or Friday, actually. Whose turn is it? Is it
Me, I think.
Do you know what you're doing?
Yeah. No. Probably game dev. But,
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
Cool. Well, Friday we'll have an event on Discord. That's what Nathan's talking about. And next Tuesday we'll have our next show. So we'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching and listening.
Yep, thanks for watching.
Oh, wrong button.
Look, tell a man no trouble, I don't want beef, man, I just want vibes.
Chat is on the screen.
Big man like me, no need for the telephone hype. I got too much getting online. One rule, then I'm on site. Wrong move, I bet they gon' ride. No need for the telephone hype, nah. No need for the snoozing. Big whip outside, I'm cruising. Big stick inside, no losing. Better watch out for the snake and Judas is. Don't ask them who this is. I bet they know what I'm moving in. I bet I show it into a dim. How you hate and then lose again? How you hating my vibes? Why you wasting my time? Getting hype on my line. Tell a man I don't want feedback, I just want relax. Brand new whip, two-tone, I need that brand new hit. You know, like lean back, brand new bits I live in. We pack, man, you never gon' like us. Get them on sight now, let them on light. That way they know I'm all righteous. Look at my life, I'm living alright. I'm nice, you know I'm alright. Cause looking like Christ, no need for the hype or fight or telephone vipers.